Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960 AM. I wanted to reach out to the Mayor of Leamington, Hilda McDonald, because we did a show a couple weeks ago on migrant farm workers and COVID-19, and clearly it's a big issue in southwestern Ontario. Her worship, Hilda McDonald, is the Mayor of Leamington. She's in her first term. She was Deputy Mayor previously, and she was on council before that. So she's got great experience both in Leamington and in political office. And Madam Mayor, thank you for joining us. Tell us, what is this issue with COVID-19 and migrant farm workers, please?
Well, the migrant farm workers live in a congregate setting. So they live in bunkhouses, or they live in houses where there are anywhere from 4 to 12 or 15. So again, congregate settings and congregate workplaces are the ideal place to pass on the virus. And so what can a person do? What can a farm do? So we're at the point right now where farms are having their workers tested. Those that test positive are isolated. We have isolation places throughout the region, and those who test negative continue to work. So it is an interesting time. There are migrant workers that come from, and we're really not even calling them migrant workers. This is an agricultural food industry. So the workers themselves, they can be from the city of Windsor, they can be from, the rest of our county, they can be from anywhere. And then of course we have those from Jamaica, from Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, and we have some also that come here from the Philippines. So it's a very diverse setting on farm. But anyway, the idea is there are so many living and working together, and consequently the virus gets spread. Further to that, you have to think about the workers themselves. Many of them come from small villages. They come here to work in order to better the lives of their families. I used to own a kitchen store years ago, and I did cooking classes. I had a liaison officer with the RCMP. Well, he went to RCMP. He was the Leamington Police. And he worked with a group of workers. They wanted a cooking class. So we did a series of classes, and I got to know about 12 of them quite well. And each one was there to better the lives of their children and their families. Or if they had a business, they were taking time to make extra money so their business would thrive. But most came from small rural villages. So again, their exposure to news and global happenings is rather limited. So again, they come here at the beginning of the pandemic or even partway through the pandemic, and now they need to be tested. They need to quarantine, things they're not familiar with. So again, they have fears. They don't have the knowledge that some of the rest of us have, just based on the fact that we live in a more global world, and they are a little more isolated. So there are fears for being tested. So with all of this, we have a bit of a mess.
So the issues that they raised with me when I spoke with several of them and sort of representatives of this union that they're trying to create is primarily associated with the ones that come from Latin America, the Caribbean, Philippines, etc., that don't have any status in Canada. That if they lose the job that they've got, the farm that they're working at, they're kicked out of the country. And so therefore they represented that they're almost like an indentured servant, and therefore they're at the mercy really of whatever the housing accommodations that the farmer provides, that they're often subpar, low standard, crowded, and that therefore they're very exposed to potentially getting the disease, the virus.
I think that is the case in some instances. I don't believe that's always the case. There are standards set by the upper levels of government. There are two programs that the workers come in on. The first one is the federal program called the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, and then there's the Seasonal Agricultural Worker Program. And there are standards set by those levels of government. And the standard living space has been dictated by those levels. health unit comes in at the beginning of the working term, does the inspection. If the places are not up to snuff, they tell them they have to enlarge the spaces. Do I think the living space is big enough? No, quite frankly, I don't. And I think we are going to see changes in that just based on what has happened with COVID, with the bright light of the public shining on this situation.
So this one gentleman I interviewed said that he was in bunk beds and there was no air conditioning, and he actually had sweat dripping on him from someone above him. Is that exaggeration, or do you think that kind of accommodation is possible?
I think that is possible. Do I think it's everywhere? I don't, but I do think there are situations like that. I think there are bad farm owners, like there are bad lawyers, bad teachers, and bad parents. So yes, I do think that is the case, and I think they have to be routed out. We need to find where they are, and they need to lose the ability to have those workers there.
So they think the solution is giving them some sort of employment status or immigration status so that they could actually leave a bad employer and go to another one without having to leave the country. Do you think that's
is that the union's point of view, or is that the workers' point of view? Because I don't know that.
It was the two workers that I spoke with, but they were members of the union. So
okay. Well, to me, I don't see why we can't make that possible. If that is what they want, I don't see the harm. They would certainly have to, go through more stringent evaluation before they come into the country. I think right now, perhaps we take anyone who's willing to come in. So we might have to do more background checks to make sure that everyone is legal and not a criminal, and so on and so forth. Do I think that's a bad thing? No, I don't think it's a bad thing. If we can build our workforce, if those people want to come here and bring their families here, they're doing valuable work that so oftentimes our own people don't want to do.
Yeah, so the two gentlemen that I spoke with, both of them have been coming here for more than 10, 15 years. And they did not come with families. They came on their own,
right?
But they returned to families every year. And so they said that they're almost Canadian because they spent a couple months here every year.
Right. Well, more than a couple months now. Yeah. But they come for more than a couple months. Years ago, when there was only two short crops or two short seasons within the year, they didn't come for as long. Now they can come for much longer. I don't see a problem with that. If that's what they want to do, I don't see that.
They also believed that, not necessarily Leamington, but areas around you would close down if they weren't allowed to come.
Oh, I would think that would be really difficult to operate a farm without our workers. We certainly know that they're the ones that get the product out. They're willing to do the work. Just like my parents, when they emigrated here in 1950 from Austria, that's what they did. They did farm work back then. And to me, that those are the people, they build their way up in the community. And I think if they want to do that, I don't see why we would have a problem with that at all.
So, you're the logical person as mayor of Leamington, because I think, aren't you still the capital, the tomato capital of Canada?
Well, there's been some pushback from the cannabis industry. And the greenhouse, really we're a vegetable produce basket here. We've got everything from tomatoes to cucumbers to peppers. And now we are also the center for greenhouse growing in cannabis.
But if someone is going to go to the federal government and make requests / demands to give farm workers, migrant farm workers, better status, because when I talk to these people, as you agree, they're sort of half Canadian or maybe a third Canadian. They're coming here and have been years after years after years for more than a decade, and are critical to your economy, critical to your community, and stay several months and keep coming back, and often to the same farmer, the same area. So they're partly us. Why won't we give them some sort of better status such that they've got the ability to discipline's not the right word, but to effectively leave a bad farm employer and go to a better one if the standards aren't there. It's just basic supply and demand, isn't it? It's that
Right.
that's the way you make sure that people offer you a fair wage, is have the ability to move. And if you don't have any ability but to leave the country again, if you don't like what someone's either giving you in pay and or providing you accommodation, you are sort of an indentured servant.
I guess you are. Do you need to come back? Like then I ask, and it's not because I'm biased or anything else, but then why do you come back? Just to answer that back. If
Well,
it's
they come back year after year, but their problem is that they don't know what the quality of the accommodation is until they're here. And then they get here and they don't like it. But the only way to change it is to leave the country.
But I believe that time they come back to the same employer.
Sometimes they do, but what they're suggesting is that the challenge this year has been that too many of the accommodations are substandard. People are catching COVID, and they can't complain, because if they complain and demand improvements, the only way out is for them to leave.
Well, I would debate that, but I'm not well enough informed about that. I didn't think there was a threat that they would be sent back at all. It's the congregate living that makes the COVID spread more possible. I've been and seen some actually very nice bunkhouses that some of the bigger farms have. But I also know there are some folks that come here and they work for employment agencies, and I have seen pictures of those places and they're horrendous. So to me, if we can get our arms around all of this in the next year and a half, I would say that's fantastic. The fact that it's been exposed to be as bad, even if it's a small portion of our farm community, we need to fix it. And if that's the way to do it, is to give them citizenship, I quite honestly don't see any harm in it. And I can be part of a group. It certainly isn't going to be me leading the path, but I would certainly be part of that group. I would say MPs, MPPs, mayors, county wardens, those are the kinds of people in a group to go forward to the upper levels. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Well, and just to be exact, they weren't asking for citizenship. What they were asking for is frankly something comparable to the green card in the United States, I think, which is to come, yes, you got to have a job offer, but you don't get kicked out of the country if you change your employer. So that it's some sort of a status that is not equal to residency, such that you can come without a job and go anywhere. Mm-hmm. But it is something that means that you're not a servant to the one employer, that you do have the ability to quit and go somewhere else.
And that may be the way we do have to go. I was under the impression, and I could be wrong, that when someone is tied, if you will, to one employer, that was just a guarantee of a job. So that if the work got decreased in some degree, they still would have a guarantee of working for that person, rather than hopping all over the place. That just may need to change. And again, I do believe COVID has exposed things like in long-term care. It has exposed fractures. It has exposed holes and weaknesses in that area, in that industry, and now we're seeing it in ours. And I see no reason why we cannot band together and make it better.
Well, Madam Mayor, I think this is a weakness in the system. I think it's been identified because of COVID-19. And if as the mayor of the capital of, if not tomatoes, at least vegetables and other things in Canada, go and appeal to Ottawa, I'll be there helping you, because I think it's that these people deserve.
I agree with you. They're valuable to us. We appreciate them. We appreciate the fact that they're here. They leave a lot of money in our community. And for the majority are kind, respectful people, and we appreciate that. At the very beginning, I worked in the greenhouse industry for a growers cooperative when I was first out of school. And in those days, greenhouses were small. They were 3 acres. Now they're building 60 acres at a pop. So the industry has evolved. The need for workers has evolved. And I would say we have not evolved appropriately with it. So what needs to be done will be done. And I've spoken to a few growers in the last few weeks that are already looking to expand, and they said they are building their bunkhouses with the idea that there will be fewer in bigger spaces. So we're recognizing that, and we will move forward to some of those requests. And again, we need to have the government in to set the standards, and we can go from there.
Well, Madam Mayor, Mayor Hilda McDonald of Leamington, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Have a great evening.
You too. Thanks.
Okay.
Just stay with us. We'll be back after some messages on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour.